This is GTV, an all-star lineup. Some games never go out of style. Case in point, Nintendo's first entries in the Super Mario Bros. Series. These games are well past the 30-year mark, and yet people still love them just as much as they did on the day these games came out. As great as this set is, their legacy still stands, thanks in part to a clever strategy by Nintendo. It was all done in a way that seems like a foregone conclusion these days, but way back when was unheard of, and actually quite genius. Stay here for the Super Mario All-Stars story. It's a tale as old as time. Your favorite video games get old, new ones come out, and those favorites of yesteryear fade away. This generational change has been happening for decades now. Over time, this changing of the tides has solidified into a precise schedule every 5 to 6 years for Nintendo and 8 to 10 years for everyone else. While this is a standard practice these days, back in the early 90s, things weren't as orderly as they are now. As the 1990s began, Nintendo had 3 product lines: the 8-bit family computer, the portable Game Boy, and the 16-bit Super Famicom. Generational shifts had happened before. In Japan, Sega, and Epic before then, simply axed the older machine and made a clean break for the next generation. Nintendo did the opposite and kept the 8-bit line alive alongside 16-bit. For a while, this worked well as fans began to migrate. Eventually, hardware sales, software sales, and software titles of the Super Famicom surpassed the older family computer. As the Super Famicom came to the West as the Super NES, the same pattern followed. The NES was phased out. Newer games came much less frequently. The older titles would fall out of print, while newer games were promoted. During this changeover, new fans were coming along for the ride. A younger generation was coming up and entering gaming at the 16-bit level. That weird generational gap left Nintendo in a pinch. On one hand, you had a new set of fans who may have heard of Mario's previous adventures, but without the older NES had no means to play them. Then, you had the old-timers who had nothing new to play, and if they wanted to take a trip through the grooveyard of forgotten hits, you had to dig out that old machine and deal with old, outdated 8-bit graphics. In 1993, Nintendo finally answered everyone's prayers with a special compilation, something new and exciting, something that, at the time, had never been done before. Nintendo took their past Super Mario Bros. Games, remastered them for the 16-bit era, and sold them in one package, Super Mario Collection, known in the West as Super Mario All-Stars. Now everyone could enjoy all of Mario's greatest hits, with improved graphics, sound, controls, and other niceties that weren't possible on 8-bit. When we come back, a look at how this genius idea came to be, and why Super Mario All-Stars might just be the greatest 16-bit Nintendo game of all time.
Super Mario Bros., Mario 2, Mario 3, and Super Mario USA 4つのゲームとおまけにニューゲームもついて1つのソフトにスーパーファミコンソフトスーパーマリオコレクション。
The concept of Super Mario All-Stars goes back to 1988, right as Super Mario Bros. 3 was let loose on the world, and Super Mario Bros. 4, as it was known then, began development. To speed up production, the initial working demo of Super Mario Bros. 4, what became Super Mario World, was not much more than a port of Super Mario Bros. 3, which was then modified and evolved into the game that we all recognize today. The development team, led by Shigeru Miyamoto, had enjoyed playing the upgraded version of Super Mario Bros. 3 and saw value in potential upgrades and re-releases of existing games in the future. That idea was put on hold. Naturally, Super Mario World and the Super Famicom took precedence over all other projects. Once Super Mario World was finished, Nintendo took Mario in some unexpected directions with Super Mario Kart and Mario Paint in 1992. These games were enjoyable, but were not true, proper Mario adventures. Around this time, there had been talk of a Super Mario World 2, but beyond the gossip pages of Quarterman, that game essentially didn't exist, and would not for a long time. To fill in the gap on the Mario timeline between 1990 and 1990X, Miyamoto went back to the idea of a remastered Super Mario Bros. 3 not long after the completion of Super Mario Kart in 1992. The project went through several stages while still on the drawing board. What eventually made it to the Super Famicom would be all of Mario's previously released 8-bit adventures, completely reworked with 16-bit graphics and sound. Each game would look uniform in design, with graphical elements that matched those of Super Mario World. The games would still retain their unique aspects, though, and feel the same as they did originally. Development on the collection moved into 1993 with the goal of releasing the game in Japan that summer and worldwide by the end of the year. The first public display of the collection took place at the 1993 Summer Consumer Electronics Show, held from June 3rd through the 6th. Word of the collection quickly took headlines across the gaming media. To remaster the original 8-bit Super Mario games was exciting on its own, but what grabbed everyone's attention was the inclusion of an all-new game. The real Super Mario Bros. 2 that the world outside of Japan had never seen. Originally, Super Mario Bros. 2 was first released in Japan on June 3rd, 1986. The game was visually identical to the original Super Mario Bros., but sported a much higher level of difficulty. On the box, the game boasted itself as Super Mario for super players. When the time came to bring Super Mario 2 to the West, Nintendo of America rejected the game outright. The reasons given were that the game was frustrating and difficult, as well as having the same graphics as the first Super Mario Bros. In its place, Nintendo took a separately produced game, Doki Doki Panic, made some gameplay adjustments, and replaced the characters. This game was one of hundreds of promotional items created for Fujisankei's Technology Expo Yume Kojo, in English, Dream Machine. Some of the key staff from the rest of the Super Mario series, such as Kensuke Tanabe and Koji Kondo, developed Doki Doki Panic, so it's not too far off from the Mario universe as it was. Years later, it was revealed that the game started off with the intent of being a new Super Mario game anyway, which then was re-released in Japan as Super Mario USA, making it all the more a perfect fit. To maintain continuity between the original set of 8-bit games and their new 16-bit remakes, the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2 was given the name The Lost Levels. The story of two versions of Super Mario Bros. 2 has been universally known for nearly 30 years. However, at the time, learning this was a revelation. Nintendo producing games that were exclusive to Japan, as well as altering others for different markets, was kept secret from most fans. Nintendo of America, through their main public relations arm, Nintendo Power, didn't waste ink reporting on games that readers would never play. Third-party publications would remark on regional differences on occasion, and not every player out there would read these. Nintendo admitting some of their secrets, as well as letting us behind that Wizard of Oz-like curtain to enjoy them, was a massive bombshell in 1993. The simultaneous feeling of resentment over not originally receiving the Lost Levels, and the jubilation that we would finally be given a few meager crumbs, is impossible to put into words. While the collection was in the works, the full-length feature Super Mario Bros. Movie was also in production after years of negotiations. It was the first theatrical film based on an existing popular video game. As both projects were finished in early 1993, Nintendo cross-promoted the collection and the movie. On July 14th, Super Mario Collection went on sale in Japan, 4 days after the Super Mario Bros. Movie debuted on the big screen. The packaging and promotional materials in Japan resembled an Academy Award gala on the red carpet, a subtle reference to Mario making it to Hollywood. Super Mario Collection sold for 9,800 yen, about $90 at the time, one of the most expensive cartridges Nintendo ever released. 1 month later, Super Mario All-Stars was released in North and South America, with the game available worldwide by December. The gaming media praised Super Mario All-Stars to the highest levels around the world upon release. In Japan, Pure Super Famicom magazine covered the game in July 1993. Beyond just the collection itself, to celebrate the new movie, the magazine covered every game Mario had appeared in up to that point, as a special feature that told the reader of Mario's roots. In the US, Nintendo Power gave an intense amount of coverage and promotion to the game in the September 1993 issue. Each game in the collection received a brief overview, but Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3 were pushed out of the way for the lost levels. Nintendo Power used its pages to warn players that this would not be an easy game, and things unthinkable in other games, such as poison mushrooms and backwards warp zones, were fair play in the lost levels. Some advice was given on how to maneuver through the first few worlds, with a few tricks on how to gain over 100 lives, which the magazine warns you will need. The feature ends with a unique challenge. Reach World 9 and receive a free iron-on patch as a reward. The only catch is that to see World 9, you have to beat all the previous stages without warping. This was followed by a 160-page strategy guide that explained every detail of each of the 4 games. The guide also covered some of Mario's history that newcomers may not have known, and provided full-color maps for every single stage in Super Mario All-Stars, nearly 200 in all. Electronic Gaming Monthly gave Super Mario All-Stars a score of 37 out of 40. The reviewers praised the concept of 4 games in one, and balancing the graphical overhaul with keeping the fun of the originals intact. GamePro fully reviewed the collection in November 1993, issuing a perfect score, stating that there are hundreds of hours worth of gameplay here and is well worth a look even if you've already played the 8-bit games. In Mexico, Club Nintendo covered the game across multiple issues, highlighting the improvements made in the 16-bit versions, with extra attention given to the lost levels. In the UK, Edge magazine reviewed the collection prior to official release, issuing a score of 8 out of 10, saying that the game was a great value, that Super Mario Bros. 3 was more playable than Super Mario World, and warns that even the first few stages of the lost levels are impossible. All of the reviews of Super Mario All-Stars around the world were very positive. However, it is worth pointing out that a few reviewers were critical that while The Lost Levels was a new experience for most of the world, Nintendo didn't actually create anything new, regardless of how fun the entire package is. When we come back, we take a look at the improvements made in Super Mario All-Stars, and the differences between what was old and what is new.
He's back. He's here. He's Mario. No, he's the new and improved Mario in Super Mario All-Stars. So much Mario, it's a Mario smorgasbord. It's all the way down Mario Brothers Adventures you ever played and then some. But this is juiced up 16-bit only on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System Mario. So it's bigger Mario, better Mario, in your face Mario. It's Raccoon Mario, Mario throwing fireballs, Mario hurling turnips, Mario negotiating an arms deal. Okay, maybe not. It's Mario like you've never seen him. What's 2 + 2 Mario? What's the capital of Ohio? Mario. You're gonna live, breathe, eat, sleep Mario in Super Mario All-Stars. 4 complete Mario games, including the never-seen lost levels. You can't get more Mario than this, which is why the best played.
When Super Mario Collection and Super Mario All-Stars first came home in 1993, players were treated with an amazing upgrade. The most beloved 8-bit games were now 16-bit, but still kept the core gameplay and charm of the originals intact. The most obvious changes made in the collection are the graphics and sound. In the 8-bit days, each character only had 3 or 4 colors, with 4 colors per object being the technical limit for sprites on screen. In All-Stars, each playable character and enemy are more colorful and detailed. For For the most part, the overall number of colors is about twice that on the 8-bit, but with a much larger palette to choose from. This enhancement made Mario, Luigi, and all the rest more detailed and realistic looking. Furthermore, the size and shape of Mario has been altered slightly to resemble how he looks in Super Mario World. Mario is short and stout, while Luigi is taller and thinner. In Super Mario Bros. 2 and the Lost Levels, Luigi's higher jumps are retained. The Princess and Toad, who are only playable in Super Mario Bros. 2, match their non-playable appearances from other games. Mario also flashes a peace sign, a habit he picked up in Super Mario World. Another improvement are the pixelated transitions seen between areas of the game. The graphical effect was used in many Super NES games, a trademark of the machine's graphical style. These changes are impressive, but the game's stages and the backgrounds are where the 16-bit graphical overhaul truly shines. The original 8-bit games all had plain single-color backgrounds for each stage, except Super Mario 3, which had backgrounds in a few places, though not all. Now every overworld stage has a gradient sky and horizon with objects in the background and foreground. For stages at night, stars twinkle in the background sky. In underworld stages, detailed backgrounds show off rock formations or structural details. The music in each game has been remastered for the 16-bit sound processor inside the Super Famicom and Super NES. The compositions are the same, though now feel inspired by Super Mario World. Another improvement is the save function, made possible through a battery inside the cartridge. You also had multiple save slots, so more than one person can keep their progress saved without disrupting anyone else's. Players had a choice of control scheme, with the option of the traditional B-dash from the original 8-bit versions, or the Y-dash, similar to the setup of Super Mario World. Due to the 4-button layout, it's possible to use separate buttons for running in fireballs, or swinging the raccoon tail, or picking up vegetables. You no longer have to use the B button for both running and an action, a nice gameplay refinement. Several glitches were removed from the games, though not all. Shigeru Miyamoto decided to remove those that he considered harmful to the player, but ones that were helpful were left in. In the first Super Mario Bros., the 1-up trick in places such as World 3-1 is still present. This is actually not a glitch and was intended to be discovered by the player. In All-Stars, the number of lives caps out at 128. In the 8-bit version, going over that number ends the game, because the program resets the counter back to 0. As an aside, the 8-bit game could not display a life count of 10 or higher correctly, which is now fixed. Mario could actually jump over the flagpole, though it was rare. If you managed to do it and continued forward, you'd get stuck and be forced to run out the timer. In All-Stars, the game no longer scrolls past the point of no return. The minus world has been removed. In the original version, this was a glitch where the player could get stuck inside a wall and pushed through to the other side, leading to a warp zone that is listed as -1. An endless, repeating water level. In All-Stars, the glitch sends you to a proper warp zone. Other glitches where Mario could get stuck are also removed. Unfortunately, a fan favorite, the small, fiery Mario glitch, is fixed and impossible to do in Super Mario All-Stars. The difficulty has been adjusted. The number of starting lives is increased from 3 to 5. This is uniform across all 4 games. In Super Mario Bros., right and wrong paths in the castle stages have sound effects, something that is also present in the Lost Levels. Extra time in castles are now converted into points, whereas in the original game it was not. So now you can try for a slightly better high score. In addition, there are multiple graphical improvements. Mario and Luigi's faces can be seen in the background of bonus areas. Toads are animated after being rescued. Originally, Toad was not just one character. The princess had 7 mushroom retainers, as they were called in 1985, who were also kidnapped. If this is your first time going back to the original series, remember that the princess was not called Peach in the West. Here, she still uses her original name, Princess Toadstool. When you rescue her, the ending messages have been changed and feature a nice animation. Bowser battles have new music. The World 8 battle with the real Bowser has its own theme. And it's not the only new theme in the game, as the title screen, previously silent, now plays a variation of the underwater stage music. In the Lost levels, there are a few unique changes as well, all meant to help the player have an easier and more enjoyable time playing the game. After finishing the first 8 worlds, you will unlock new levels with an even higher level of difficulty. If you can beat the game without warping, you can unlock World 9. In the original version, you get just 1 life to finish World 9. In the 16-bit remake, you can use all the lives you have earned up to that point, making the fantasy world much more bearable. In the 8-bit version, you can unlock worlds A, B, C, and D, but only if you hold A plus start at the title screen after beating the game 8 times. Cruel and senselessly cryptic. In Super Mario All-Stars, you only have to beat it once. Much better. These improvements are a great way to highlight what was originally intended by the development staff. The acknowledgement and retention of helpful bugs were also welcomed. However, there was at least one new bug created from Super Mario All-Stars. Or maybe it's a feature, depending on how you look at it. In the original Super Mario Bros. And the Lost levels, when Mario jumps through floating bricks, he continues to move upward, as if there wasn't a brick there in the first place. It throws off the learned memory you've built up over time from the original 8-bit games. This bug/feature does not appear in Mario 3 or USA, making it feel even stranger when switching between games. So what's the deal? It seems that a minor error in the code is to blame. Just one value was entered incorrectly and was never fixed before going out the door. The error is so simple that fans of the game have easily corrected the mistake and redistributed the game bug-free. In Super Mario Bros. 2, aka Super Mario USA, enemies are made more colorful. Some of the gray-colored enemies found in 8-bit have become green or pink. Life meters are now hearts in All-Stars. In the original, they were hexagons. When you pick up a key, the eyes of the giant Phanto in the background will glow, signaling that the key has been removed. The boss battle backgrounds have blocks that are based on the design of N and B blocks. These were toy building blocks somewhat analogous to Lego that were sold by Nintendo in Japan in the 1960s and 70s. As for actual gameplay, changes have been made to make the game easier. There are now unlimited continues, whereas in the 8-bit version, you only had 3. The bonus chance has been expanded to include the Lucky 7, which grants 10 lives as a reward. Some sound effects have been added to alert the player of various actions, such as the power jump becoming active and auto bombs breathing fire. Super Mario Bros. 3 has the largest number of changes made in Super Mario All-Stars. All of the graphical glitches have been cleaned up in the Super Mario All-Stars version. The edge of the screen no longer flickers. All question mark blocks are animated. Some did not before. Ditto for some coins. World maps have a lot more color and feature more animations, such as the stage markers glowing and Spade Game markers shuffling. The cursed kings are changed. In the 8-bit version, the kings were transformed into various animals. In the remake, they are now characters from different Mario games, including Super Mario World, causing somewhat of an anachronism. The opening screen now has music, a version of the original Super Mario Bros. Underwater theme. With this addition, all 4 remade games start with similar music. Super Mario Bros. 2 had music in the original 8-bit version, and perhaps that theme influenced the other games in the collection. The battle mode in Super Mario Bros. 3 also receives a major upgrade. This minigame, based on the original Mario Bros. Arcade game from 1983, occurs when Mario and Luigi meet on the overworld map. 2 players battle it out to knock out your opponent, or defeat 5 enemies, whichever comes first. You also have the chance to steal 1-up cards, if you're lucky. Whoever wins the battle takes control of the board. In Super Mario All-Stars, the battle game is now a selectable option right from the title screen. This new version offers more gameplay value. You can choose up to 5 wins to secure victory. Defeating an enemy no longer grants a coin. Much like the original Mario Bros., the coin must be collected afterwards, when it is sent out of the pipe. Mushrooms are available as a power-up. More enemies are on screen, and the shell creepers can knock out multiple enemies, or even yourself. In the years following the release of Super Mario All-Stars, the 16-bit generation would fade away. But the concept of remade Mario games and the collection itself would live on. When we come back, how Nintendo mastered the art of the reissue.
My friends at Nintendo have placed 4 Super Mario games on the same cart for less than 50 of your pounds. Super Mario Bros. 1 is pretty tricky. Super Mario Bros. 2 is a little more advanced. Super Mario Bros. 3 is... But Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels is so difficult, it could actually unhinge the balance of your mind.
Aren't you that talentless celebrity women find repellent?
See what I mean? It's completely tonto.
Mario All-Stars, an infuriating innovative Nintendo.
Super Mario Brothers.
Since 1993, Super Mario All-Stars has been one of the most popular and beloved Nintendo titles of all time. Beyond the greatness of the collection itself, the legacy of these games continues on even today, thanks to an evergreen strategy of timed re-releases. To keep up with Sega in the all-important console war of the early 90s, Nintendo offered new Super NES owners a chance to receive Super Mario All-Stars for free via a mail-in offer in 1994. The offer was only for a limited time, and while supplies lasted. When all the copies were gone, Nintendo re-released the collection with Super Mario World included. The 5 games were given away with an all-new Super NES package, the Mario Set, and was sold as a standalone cartridge, something that never happened in the US. While in Japan, this 5-in-1 game was never released at all. For the early adopter who somehow missed the collection, the game was reissued in the US as a million-seller Player's Choice title in 1996. After the Super Famicom and Super NES were retired, the collection fell out of print. However, the concept of reissuing classic games on newer hardware lived on. In 1999, the original Super Mario Bros. Was released for the Game Boy Color in all regions outside of Japan, with a Japanese release arriving the next year. The game featured a few minor graphical updates, though not as many as seen in All-Stars, due to the 8-bit limits of the Game Boy Color. Included in the game were challenge modes for each stage and the ability to unlock the 8 standard worlds of the Lost Levels, after scoring higher than 300,000 points. In 2001, Nintendo released the Game Boy Advance. The all-new portable machine, third in the Game Boy line, was very powerful for its small size and capable of delivering Super NES-style games. The very first game released was Super Mario Advance, an improved version of the 16-bit Super Mario Bros. 2. The graphics looked similar, though were reworked for the smaller screen, which was a 3:2 ratio. Not exactly widescreen, but with more space than the original Game Boy. Other minor improvements were made, including new animations, sound effects, and voiceovers for each character. The Mario Bros. Battle game from Super Mario Bros. 3 was also included. The same format is retained, and now also includes an option to play the game in its original style. Over the next 2 years, Nintendo would release the remaining Super Mario Bros. Games for the Game Boy Advance. Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island would be designated as Super Mario Advance 2 and 3, respectively. The All-Stars version of Super Mario Bros. 3 would come next, given the confusing title of Super Mario Advance 4. In all, from 1999 to 2003, all of the traditional 2D Super Mario games were re-released for a new generation to enjoy for the first time, and for the older generation to relive in a new format. Beginning in 2006, the original 8-bit Super Mario Bros. Games were re-released for the Wii Virtual Console. Though no improvements were made, the games were well received, as 8-bit graphics had surprisingly become fashionable again. The All-Stars versions of the games were later released in 2010 to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the original Super Mario Bros. Included with the game was an audio CD that featured BGMs from various Mario games released since 1985. Today, Super Mario All-Stars, as well as the originals, appear on the Nintendo Switch Online service. Thanks to the success of the collection, Nintendo gave some of its other games the remake and reissue treatment. The complete list is long and exhaustive, but just to tick off the big names, Zelda, Metroid, Kirby, and Pokemon have all had older games updated and re-released for new hardware at some point. From Game Boy to 3DS or Wii to Switch, the continual re-releases of our favorite games have become something of a tradition at Nintendo, with fans ready to line up and hand over hard-earned money all over again like clockwork. The All-Stars brand was revived once more with a new set of old games. Super Mario 3D Collection, as it was known in Japan, or in the West, Super Mario 3D All-Stars, was released for the Switch on September 18, 2020. The new collection features Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy, upgraded for a new era. Much like the original collection, this new one gives longtime fans a chance to relive old memories without having to dig up that old machine, and for those first-timers, a quick, easy way to experience some Nintendo history. Thanks to the marketing strategy behind Super Mario All-Stars and the influence it had, Mario can stay relevant in the modern day and not fall into obscurity like so many others that have come and gone. Sure, the current Mario adventure is great, but how did we get here? What came before? It's the perfect way to fill in the gaps and keep every link in the chain, from the first games to the latest, strong and relevant for all time. When we come back, let's wrap it up with the answer to a long-burning question. Was it right to withhold the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2 until it became The Lost Levels?
Big, stylish, and now one of the best values in America. Yes, for a limited time, buy the Super NES Super Set and get 5 complete Mario games standard.
Mario,
You'll find the Super Set is like no other system. In performance, handling, and Mode 7 control, you'll get Super Mario World. And for $3.50 in postage, Super Mario All-Stars free with 4 Mario games in one.
Mario.
So stop by your Nintendo dealer today.
When it comes to value, don't forget Super Nintendo Super Set.
In 1993, the main draw for us old-timers to run out and buy Super Mario All-Stars was clearly The Lost Levels. The new graphics were nice and all, but this was a completely heretofore unreleased game, finally available. With The Lost Levels, Nintendo took the mask off, for a moment anyway, and publicly admitted that there were actually 2 worlds of gaming, Japan and the West. Maybe Nintendo wasn't positioning itself this way, but a lot of us American kids took it to mean that Japan had all the best stuff, and if we were lucky, we might get 1 or 2 of these games years later. And all the rest left behind in Japan? Well, TS. What made it worse is that The Lost Levels created a rift in the Mario timeline, one that seemed unrepairable. 2 versions of Super Mario Bros. 2? How could this be? Why is the Japanese Mario 2 exactly like Mario 1? Why is the difficulty so crazy? Why is this other Mario 2 so different from 1 and 3? It raised more questions than it actually answered. Third-party gaming magazines like EGM and Die Hard Game Fan certainly didn't help. They would print whatever news they could find to outdo each other on The Big Scoop about games from Japan. And if they ever became reality years later, great. And if not, well, that's not their problem. Hey, weren't games made in America at one point? What happened to that? Meanwhile, you're a teenage kid caught in the middle of all this, not sure what to make of it, except that your paper route money is set aside for a faint hope far across the sea that likely would never come true. It was cool that Nintendo did make the effort to acknowledge the difference and try to make it right. But for a long time, I really resented it. After this revelation, I didn't even bother with Nintendo much anymore. I was content with the older games, and looked elsewhere for a more open and transparent experience for new games. To be fair, it wasn't just Nintendo. Every Japanese company is guilty of this to some degree. But at the time, I really felt burned about the way Nintendo treated its fan base. As time went on, I would wonder what would life be like if the Western world had all the same games as Japan, and if life would have been better if a game like The Lost Levels were sold in its original format. I thought about it up and down for years, and I have to say that Nintendo was probably right in withholding The Lost Levels. The game is way too hard. Of course, as an adult, you should have a lot more experience, coordination, and patience for things like this, but even at 10 years old or 12 or whatever, I would have absolutely hated this game as Mario 2. It would make no sense for a game to start out extra difficult and only get worse. The graphics were 99% identical to the original Super Mario Bros. I know in the 21st century, the mantra for Nintendo fans is gameplay over graphics, but that's a crock. It really is. Graphics really mattered back then. Look at any game review or any commercial. It's all they talked about. Back in those days, every sequel I can think of delivered better graphics, trying to outdo its predecessor, which eventually did happen with Super Mario Bros. 2, aka Super Mario USA. I just can't imagine millions of kids out there who started on the first Super Mario Bros., as well as seeing other sequels follow the trend I just mentioned, go on to open up these lost levels on Christmas Day. There would have been a lot of confusion and frustration, maybe some tears. So we got a different Super Mario Bros. 2. Still a very fun game. The graphics put the first game to shame. It was unique to play the princess, rather than having to rescue her. And if you want to factor in that Bowser, King of the Koopa, has been defeated, possibly killed, then it would make sense that a whole new adventure and character set were needed. Of course, I'm not ignoring that the game was Doki Doki Panic in Japan, and Super Mario USA years later. Had we received the Lost Levels instead of this, we would have likely been locked out of a great game. Yume Kojo, in English Dream Machine, was a huge event, like a World's Fair and Epcot Center all rolled into one, and only in Japan. Nintendo made a game based on that, somewhat, and maybe, possibly, could have brought it overseas, but in its original form, the game would have made no sense. We had no understanding of the characters, the context of the masks, and so on. When you contemplate the alternate reality where Nintendo doesn't need to whip up a new Mario 2 just for us, I'm fairly certain the game would have never left Japan. Then comes Super Mario All-Stars, which polishes up the Lost Levels into a playable, though still challenging game, wrapped around the understanding that the game really was the wrong choice at the time, but now, thanks to 16-bit power, Nintendo could deliver the game they always wanted to. The Lost Levels, and really the whole collection, was a great value for the time, and still is a great set of games that hold up. I can't imagine an alternate universe where online game reviewers run through a list of worst games ever, and alongside the list of usual suspects, Hudson Hawk et al., sits a Super Mario game. It could have happened, but thankfully it didn't. To sum it up, you can just say that as you grow up, you learn to appreciate what you have. Maybe you didn't at the time, but now you do. And like so many other things in life, the struggles of gaining those things over time, maybe not exactly how you wanted, but still having them in the end, makes you appreciate it all the more.